welcome to another episode of BeingLab. Thank you for being here once again. My name is Gonzalo Cordova, your host, and I am delighted to bring this episode today titled How to Talk About Emotions to Our Children. So, wait a second, don't go anywhere. You may be thinking, well, what if I don't have children, Gonzalo? Well, that's not a problem. You may have nephews and nieces or friends with children, or maybe you forgot that you are hard or a child, and we still have dreams and wishes and things that we don't share much. So it will apply to you as well. But if you do have children, you know that one of our main concern as parents or as relatives who are near children, we want to treasure that. And today, what I bring are concepts that are aligned with the rest of our season two. Now, before I begin with the core of the topic, I'd like to share with you that I try to put my heart and soul to each and every single one episode of the podcast. Whether it's in English or Spanish, I want you to, my main wish and goal is for you to use this as a tool. And if this tool is not working, let me know. Please reach out. I would love to find the topics and answer the questions or ask the questions that can bring forth to the forefront tools and ideas that you can apply to your personal and professional life. So that's the main goal. As always, a gentle reminder to subscribe and follow, reach out through all my social media platforms. The best way in which we can reach out to more people like you is when you share, download the podcast, and spread the word and the worth. So that's my request to you if you kindly accept. Let's then start. Once again, the title is How to Talk About Emotions to Our Children. And I'd like to begin by, do you see how we often ask in life how instead of what? And I like to begin with that distinction. When we ask how, we aim for either an explanation or a formula, a recipe, which is fine. It's great. However, when we begin a question with the word what, we are going to aim at the individual, at the person that is typically asking the question or the person in front of us. And I think it's fair to say how to talk about emotions. But if I am not the one posting the question, what do we talk? When we talk about emotions, then we're not going to go anywhere because I'm not going to give you a recipe. What I want is for us to dive deep into the concept of emotions so that when you are near your children or your nephews and nieces, you can have a conversation without even thinking about the concept, but about what's beyond that. And so that's the beginning of this conversation. That's the context, the intro, if you will. If you have not heard me or listened to the podcast in this season, we are focusing all our efforts into talking about the world of emotions and language and the connection between those two. And throughout I believe this is our sixth episode, I've been trying to shred and shed light to all these concepts. And so I don't want to create a place where you have to listen to each and every single one episode so that each and every single episode makes sense. But I recommend that if you want to have that, go through that journey, please go do it. Otherwise, you can stay here and listen to the following idea. Emotions have a very different understanding depending on the culture, the country, and the language you speak. Generally speaking, we confuse emotions with feelings or with sentiments. And that is something that I've been talking for many years now, that we need to divide those ideas. And we need to begin to nurture and cultivate a different idea of emotions. And what is that idea? The idea that I propose, I'm not saying is the right one. I'm just saying this is an idea for you to bring forth in your conversations with children, is that emotions are not good or bad. Emotions are neutral. Okay? That idea alone, it's an eye opening for a lot of adults. If you bring this to a kid, it's an eye opener. So, once again, emotions are not good or bad, they're just an energy that you, as a person, according to the way in which you want to use that energy, is going to be very negative or very positive. But guess what? Just like a battery, it could be very neutral. So it's up to you what you do, what you make with it. It's not about the emotion, it's about yourself. And so that's already a concept that you can start applying to your children. Another important idea about emotions is that emotions are what we are predisposed to do in certain moments in life. For instance, if I lose a very meaningful object, it could be a pen, it could be a sweater, it could be the drawing that I have behind me. If for me is meaningful, it's going to bring loss. Most likely, I am going to get sad. That's what happens to us when we lose something that has meaning to us. If the drawing or the pen or the object has no meaning, we don't feel sad. We don't feel ourselves sadness. Well, that's another idea that we can bring to our kids, that emotions are predisposing you to connect with, in this case, an object or a situation or a pet or relatives or friends. Emotions are like a signal down the road when we're driving that is literally telling us how we are relating to that freeway, to that situation. When we're driving and we see exit at 2.5 miles, we know that the exit is going to be at 2.5 miles. So we either change lanes, put our signal, or we move away and keep driving. It's our choice. It's not going to be the car's choice. So that's what emotions are. They help us predispose our way of moving throughout life in a way, or in one way or another. And the last concept I want to name before we continue with this episode is that emotions exist because you have a body. If you have a body, emotions are within you from factory. Like when you buy a car, that car typically comes with certain things like seats and a steering wheel and hopefully brakes and radio and doors and sunroof lights. The same thing happens to us, human beings, when we have a body. Inside of us, more than 200 emotions are ready to come out, depending on your assessment of life. Now, let's bring all that I just said to the context of children. I don't know if you've noticed, but children experience emotion in a very profound, real, and raw way. When they are happy, every single cell is happy. When they're sad, every single cell is sad. When they're angry, you can see their anger all over and exploding, and it's just crazy. Hence tantrums, right? They're like everywhere. Well, when we are kids, when we are young, we don't have the ability to take a look at the emotion and tame it, or like a thermometer, move it to a place that is not as hot or as cold and find its place and timing. We don't do that. We just feel, right? And we are so like a wave, watered down and splashed with the emotion that we can control it. We can't. So, our job as adults is to help them identify the emotion, because we can only change what we see. If we don't know that we're angry and we are hitting someone, and we don't even know how to control our fist that is aiming at the face of our partner at school, well, that's going to cause a lot of trouble. And so, part of the idea that I bring today is that if we work with children, or that if we have kids of our own, or we have nephews and nieces, or our friends have kids, this is a great tool to understand the perspective of the child. The child seldom can control their state, their emotional state. It happens not only all of it, their bodies experience the emotion, but it shifts dramatically from happiness to sadness, from sadness to anger, and goes back and forth. And so it's constantly changing depending on what they're seeing and feeling and experiencing. So we as adults have the ability to observe. And when we observe that, we can teach them a few practices. At the end of this episode, I'm going to share with you two or three that are going to be helpful to help them with that, to support them as they go through those emotions. But the first and most important thing I tell people that want to learn to bring emotions into their family and with their kids is make it simple, as simple as you can, but always give them more than what they can understand. Why? Let me share. Let me separate that sentence. Make it simple, but always give them more. Okay? Make it simple because, as you know, a child, whether it's a toddler or a teenager, still learning about the world, still too young. If you think about it, at 15, at 12, at 5, you've been in the world just for so long, so little. So they need resources, they need you to make it simple. And one idea that has helped throughout my life as a coach, my coaching life, to my clients is the following. Talk about emotions not as something bad, not as something complicated, but as something natural, as something that is as obvious as we all have a refrigerator in our home, or we all live under a roof, right? We have a roof, and or we have a door, and same thing. Make it as obvious, as simple as possible, so the child, the kid understands. Everyone has it. When my child was very young, I remember that she was so fast and so eager to let go of the diaper, but not all kids do that. She was like, in one summer, like, this is not going to happen. I'm not going to wear a diaper. Everyone poops. Remember that book? I don't know if you know it. If you have children and you want them to get rid of the diaper, everyone poops, everybody poops. It's a great read because they make that process so simple. Well, the same thing we're going to do with emotions. Everyone has emotions. Everybody experiences emotions. If we make it weird, it's going to be weird. If you make it common, it's going to be common. Not necessarily common sense, but it's going to be common. So make it simple. Another way to make it simple is to think about emotions as the water, the hot and cold water in your home. If you think of a house, beyond the walls and underneath, there's going to be piping, right? There's going to be all those tubes, all those pipes. And when you want to wash your hands, all you have to do is open the faucet, either either one or both, mix them, and you'll have hot, cold, really hot, mild water. It doesn't matter. You mix it, and out of the house comes water. But the water only comes out if you open the faucet. The mix and the temperature, it's up to you. You know the right mixture. You need to learn to mix those faucets, the opening, to get the right temperature. When you don't pay attention, you can get hot, really hot, and burn yourself, or really cold, and some people hate it. The same thing happens with emotions. Emotions are running through you like those pipes from a house. And when an event happens, the emotions that are going to trigger are going to be really hot and they're going to make you sweat and you're going to be angry, or they're going to be super cold and you're going to shiver, or they're going to be mild temperature, warm, and they're going to make you tender. So it's about you, how to mix those emotions. And the last simple way to talk about emotions to children is, do you remember the primary colors? The same thing happens with emotions. There are 6 basic emotions, and they're like the basic, the primary colors. When you mix them, you form a third or a fourth or a fifth or a sixth, or and so forth and on, different colors. Depending on the saturation of the color, you're going to have certain emotions or the purity of another one. Depends on what's going on in your life, is the emotion that you emote, right? Sometimes in life, we feel pity, which is a complex emotion, it's a mixture, or we feel fear, which is a basic emotion. So, whatever we mix or however we approach an emotion is what we're going to experience. So hopefully so far you're getting a picture where emotions stopped from being complicated and now we are trying to look at them as simple. Now, in the phrase I gave you, I said, make them simple, but give them more always. Always give the child more than what they can understand. Why? Because if you are not the one giving them more, they're going to go out and find it somewhere else. And that somewhere else sometimes is the internet, and they're going to find a lot of crap, or they're going to ask people that they don't know what the heck they're talking about. And so this is a lesson that I learned when my child was asking about sex. And an amazing psychologist that worked with us said, talk to your child, but then give them as much as you can, go as far as you can within the limits of what's acceptable for a child so that you don't have more questions. And if they do, they come to you because they know you're going to give them more. And so you can gauge that with your child. If they're too little, you're going to notice that you're going to lose their attention. And that's the place to stop. That's it. If your child is a teenager, they're going to let you know, okay, I got it. I understood. That's your stop. But if they keep listening, you can keep going. You can keep going and telling them about the different emotions and how they help us connect and how, depending on the event, the emotions are triggered. Otherwise, you're not going to move. And then if they keep listening, you can keep going and you can talk to them about the difference between an emotion and a more complex situation when you're mixing more than one. Or you can also talk about moods. And moods are when emotions are, they stayed for longer, for a long time. Where they're long term, that's what we call a mood. So at some point in that speech, they're going to say, okay, I'm fine, or you're going to lose their attention. So give them more. That way, they're going to come back and hopefully say, so what is it that you were sharing about moods that, okay, this is what I was saying. Or can you talk to me more about this? And you can continue. The other aspect is, I think growing up, if you are Gen X like me, you know that our parents were emotionally illiterate, right? Our parents did not talk about emotions. In fact, some of our parents, or the majority of our parents, used to say emotions they don't have a place in life. You need a cold head to make decisions. Do not get emotional. Well, we now know, scientifically even, that emotions are critical to our development, right? A child that can experience gratitude and tenderness is going to be a more nurtured person. Well, Gonzalo, we didn't experience it. No, we didn't, but we are seeking, right? We're always trying to learn, and we crave that. That's why most of us have therapists and psychologists or coaches, because it shows that we need it. One way or another, we're going to find ways to cope with what we didn't receive. Sometimes is with bad habits, sometimes is with good habits, sometimes is with our professional development, sometimes we develop our persona, and sometimes we do nothing, which is in fact another way to do something. Okay. And so, to close and wrap up this episode, I want to share with you 3 ideas that are going to help you practice how to talk about emotions with your children. The first one is, we need to understand that emotions are learned by immersion, meaning when we experience an emotion, we learn the emotion. If you want your child to be tender, give them tenderness. Be tender with them. If you want your child to be happy, learn to be happy yourself so they can be so. If you want your child to learn to manage anger and to cope and be okay with anger, you need to tell them and teach them that. When you get angry, show them how to control anger. A child that grows up in a household where emotions are normal and you can tame them and control them and breathe through them, it's a child that's going to grow up doing the same thing. Remember, emotions are part of our bodies. Therefore, immersing yourself in the collective of an emotion, that's the fastest way to experience it. And I'll give you an example. If you ever been to a Buddhist retreat, you know exactly what compassion feels like. The emotion of compassion is going to be splashing all over. If you want to feel fear, well, maybe in your neighborhood there's an alley where bad things happen. You don't need to experience that to know it. You know what it feels like. Okay. So remember, immersion is critical. To be the example, I somehow already did that in the first practice, the first suggestion, but I want you to remember that we are constantly being assessed by our children. Again, if you don't have children, if you don't have a child, but you visit your siblings and you have nephews and nieces, they're looking at you. When you behave, when you react, when you become dramatic, they know that they have that ability too. They can react that way too. So show them by example, lead by example. Learn first yourself how to manage emotions so they have a great pattern to follow, right? Like when we tailor a suit, you need a great pattern. You follow that pattern, you can copy that suit over and over and over. The third one, here's a short story. I remember when my child was very little that we were at a grocery store and my child was throwing a tantrum. And a lady walking by said, "How do you let her throw a tantrum in public?" I didn't reply to the lady. So I kept talking to my then toddler daughter. And I said to my daughter, "Emmy, keep doing what you're doing. It's okay. If you need to throw a tantrum, do it. You're going to do it here, seated down, waiting until you feel fine and you're ready to get up and continue with our grocery shopping." You know what she said? "Daddy, I'm ready." Because she was allowed to experience that. I'm not saying it's okay to throw tantrums. I'm not saying that it was right what she was doing, but I was allowing her space to feel those emotions. And so if we restrain our children from feeling, they're going to find other ways, I assure you, to express those emotions. And those emotions, sometimes you're not going to love them because they're going to be all over when they're teenagers. And so the message here is when you see them sad, talk about sadness with them, create a space for healthy sadness, create spaces for healthy anger, create spaces for healthy joy and excitement. All those emotions have a place and a time in a correct situation. They're phenomenal. In the wrong timing, they're the wrong emotion. So I hope this inspires you to nurture your child, your children, if you have more than one, or your nieces and nephews, if you do have the luxury of having those. If not, remember, at heart, you are a child, and it will be lovely for you to learn to do this. Now, if anything that I am saying feels like you need to have a conversation, that you need help, that you need support, please reach out. One of the things that I'm most passionate about is to talk about emotions, hence this season of emotions and language. Well, that's it. Thank you so much for being part of this episode. I look forward to you continuing in this journey with me. If you have any topics, any suggestions, any complaints, even better. I love having conversations with people who have suggestions, or if there's anything you think this program, this show needs to change, please, we welcome all those. Me and my team are always happy to hear from you. And please, with this, I say goodbye. Don't forget to subscribe and follow. You can find me on social media at Gonzalo Cordova. Take care and sending you a big hug and a kiss. Bye bye.